Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Land and Legacy by Griffith Realty. I'm Scott Griffith, and my sister Carol, who's my partner at Griffith Realty, we're here today to talk a little bit about things as it relates to our industry.
Glad to be here, Scott. One of the things we thought we'd talk about and share, which a lot of information is now kind of at the top of everyone's mind, is that of interest rates. Yeah. So we'll talk about that, and also we're going to talk a little bit, recap 2021 in terms of preferences, buyer preferences. So they kind of go hand in hand, so we get a little better picture of what's coming for us here in 2022.
Yeah, they sure do. I mean, so we've entered a new phase of the economy that's going to is, from our understanding, exists for the rest of 2022, and that's, of course, of the Fed increasing the Fed rate. Their intention, and they've already started to do it, is start to ratchet up the Fed rate. We've been at zero for since about 2018 in an unbelievably long, extended time, and a lot of people believe the Fed should have started increasing the Fed rate before this, but now they're doing it at the same time. They're trying to do it without forcing the economy into a recession. I mean, the natural effect of the Fed rate, of course, is to start to raise the cost of borrowing as it relates to different instruments through the banking system, which then tends to get passed on to the public, which kind of restricts demand and therefore balances supply and sort of takes us away from these inflationary things that take place. In the short run, it tends to be a lot of pressure. The stock market typically, now that the Fed's been telegraphing it purposefully for so long that they're going to increase it, has already reflected their decision in many aspects. The thing that's interesting for our industry, for the real estate industry, for a potential buyer or seller, is they hear interest rates being increased through the Fed, and they think it's a direct correlation to our business, and then technically it's really not. The closest thing that reflects the way to track the mortgage rates, and I think we covered it on a previous Land and Legacy with Lawrence Young, the national economist, is that 10-year Treasury bonds are about the closest thing that reflects what mortgage rates are going to do. And as Carol may point out here, their 10-year bonds, the reason that most people believe that they're so closely related to the mortgage rates is most people anticipate they're only going to live in their house about 10 years. Therefore, mortgages will be paid off in 10 years. So the likelihood of a return on a bond of 10 years is going to be similar to what the return is for a mortgage that's held on a house for 10 years. So that's the correlation. So if you're curious of which direction you think interest rates are going to go, take out the Wall Street Journal or some document and look at the 10-year bond rates. Don't worry as much about the Fed rate. The Fed rate will have an impact. I'm not saying it doesn't. It just is not a direct correlation.
Yeah, we've seen ups and downs, and I think when we first started in real estate, if you remember, the interest rate for houses was 21%.
Right.
And then it went down to 18. And once it broke 20, we were all like, oh, wow, this is really great. And then we went through some ups and downs, and, in recent years, we've laughed and we said it's almost like free money. Yeah. I mean, we never thought we would. When we got down to single digits, we thought, oh, this can't last.
Right.
Who's ever seen a single-digit interest rate on a mortgage? But that kept coming down. So we've had a nice ride all along, and we come in and we come out of these things and we roll through them. I think when the market starts to change like it is now and there's some other tensions in the world, I think that kind of magnifies these decisions that are being made and sometimes can be overly concerned.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the things as we talk about the bond market, and not to get too technical here, is you have to understand the United States dollar is still extremely strong, and our economy is still considered extremely strong compared to other countries that are so impacted by other dynamics, such as Europe. So our bonds, even when paying a very little bit of interest, are a higher return than investing in bonds of another country. So we have many countries buying our bonds. So as the Fed is trying to tighten credit a little bit so that it controls inflation, the bond market may not respond the same way if people from Europe and other nations are buying our bonds and keeping the rate low. So your mortgage rate may stay low because of the return on bonds, even though the Federal Reserve is trying to tighten monetary policy. So they're an unenviable balancing act to try to regulate it, but it also shows you that there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at real estate and in the mortgage rate. And as you say, Carol, we've been here before. When we started in real estate, it was 6% interest rate. 40 some years ago, every year it went up about 1%, and nobody talked about it till it hit 10%, and then we noticed it. But there was a difference. We also had inflation. Inflation's been around. We've only gone through a period of no inflation for a short time in our lives. Most of the time, inflation has always been anywhere from 4% to 10%. And so it's fascinating to have gone now through a period of no inflation. And just like the University of Michigan report that just came out in the last month talked about, inflation has such a sort of an insidious spiral effect that when you start paying more for your food and gas and you realize that what you're getting paid isn't enough, and you go in and ask your boss for a raise, and they're sympathetic to everybody, and then they start to look at their costs and they have to go up, and then they pass on those costs through the consumer, and all of a sudden you go in and go, wait a minute, I just got a raise, but the inflation, it went up more. I need another raise. So it's an insidious spiral. Hopefully we can do this with the Balancing Act. But when there is this type of cycle going on in inflation, and we've seen digit inflation thing in our housing market because of the supply issue, you start to say, well, what is it that people are looking for that's going to make my house desirable and make my house the preferred house? So I know you've done some study on preferences, Carol, of what people looked for last year, and what are some of the ones you've seen?
Right. So it's really interesting. One of the benefits for us to belong to the National Association of Realtors is they give us surveys that have been taking, all over the United States. So why the demographics might be a little bit different here in Livingston County or where we're selling in our backyard, there's some similarities. And they've been doing these surveys for about 40 years, so it's really quite interesting to read what the preferences are for buyers right now. And we found, everybody talks about how COVID has changed our life over the last 2 years, but it also has in the housing industry. So the preferences for the buyers now looking at houses, we are very in tune with. So for instance, as you would recall, Livingston County is a great place for commuters. Because, people would say, well, I want to be close to home, under an hour drive. I want that quality of life and good schools and that sort of thing. So, Livingston County is ideally located because they don't have to drive so far. Well,
you could hit 4 metro markets in less than an hour.
Sure.
And hit, I believe it was 80% of the employment in the state of Michigan back a few years ago. You could get it within an hour or two from here. So the 2-income family, and as you say, the 2-income family who also needs to be mobile through the airport had the ability to get there. So we were perfectly located for the guy who had to get in the car and go.
Right. And so now through this survey, so it's not just here in Livingston County, although we kind of already knew this.
We've seen it.
Yeah. That people are working from home and that sort of thing. So really it's changed the requirements for buyers right now. They have spent a lot of time at home. They haven't gone back.
They now have to spend time at home all the time.
And so now they look for areas that are close to family and friends. So we talked about the quality of life. They're active. They've been able to enjoy the outdoors. They get, they're not driving to their home an hour
It's about
earlier.
the environment.
It's certainly about the environment.
You can take your dog outside. You can ride your bike outside. You can go skiing out the back door. You don't have to drive there to do it.
So that's what, and Livingston County, of course, is very enriched with all of the recreation, that sort of thing. But that's a demographic that has changed. Also, that people are staying in their houses, kind of like what you alluded to before. When this study was done a couple years ago, the average time that a family would stay in a house is 8 years. It's now moved to 10. So people are thinking they're going to stay longer in their house. And it was interesting to read, too. I thought that the first-time buyer still makes up a large portion of our market, and I see that's true here in Livingston County.
Yeah.
Where the first-time buyer, back in the 80s was 44% of the market, it's now 36%. It slipped a little bit, but that has a lot to do with affordability, has a lot to do with supply and demand, of course. And our first-time buyer has gotten older. So the average age of a first-time buyer now, and we're talking nationally, is 33 years old. And the next time they buy up, the average age is 56.
And what's interesting is with during this period of coming out of the COVID era, if we're hopefully coming out, the 30-somethings are all employed. If they want to be working, they're employed. We've reached as close to full employment as anybody desires to be as you can be, and that means they have mortgageability. They can borrow, and they can borrow maybe more than in the days when they had part-time jobs or starter jobs. So all of a sudden, they're a little later first-time buyers, but they can afford so much more. Their affordability index is so much higher. Now, clearly, if we go through periods of constrained oil prices and food prices and these other things, that'll change their affordability. And then with price of housing doubling, it's going to change everything, except for the fact is they can buy, and if you have a will, you'll find a way to buy, and they have jobs, so they can buy. So it's good.
And I think with that, over the years, you and I have seen that there's a lot of different mortgage products now.
Yes.
So the differences in the mortgage products have really helped some of the first-time buyers, or those that, when we first got in real estate, if you didn't have 20% or more to put down, you just weren't going to get a mortgage. And so now that's a little bit different. In fact, we're even seeing that nationwide, the down payment has come down just a little bit for the average buyer than it was a few years ago. But I think that's for a lot of different significant reasons, too.
Well, and as you know, Carol, in a previous podcast, we had our Michigan lobbyist here talking about the success of our work in the legislature and getting a first-time home buyer savings account established with some tax credits. What an awesome deal to be able to help people who want to get that first house, have family members, especially people my age and older, who are going to be transferring their estates to their kids or grandkids in the future, to be able to have a mechanism to have them start to save for their first time for their down payment. What a great thing.
And there's a lot of people who have their kids in their basement, like to get them out.
Well, it's we'll
start that savings account, get out quicker.
Start giving them money.
So anyway, I all of these things is just, I think that's one of the things I really love about real estate, because when there's a problem, we try to solve it.
Yes.
And so the market is still good.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
We get into the spring market. It's a great time to get your house market ready. A lot of people are calling us right now. So even though there hasn't been a lot of inventory, we anticipate there'll be more as the time comes.
And I think there's going to be more. I mean, the challenge of today, as we talk to people about selling their homes, is the first question now has changed from many others to where you're going to move. And if you don't know where you're going to move, I don't think you should be putting your home on the market, because your options after you sell it may be almost non-existent, and you don't want to be caught homeless by mistake. So clearly it's a chicken and egg issue, as so often happens.
And we're also finding, and it's not just here in Livingston County, but we're finding generational homes. So some of the people that we talk to are really transitioning. Some of them are going to senior living, or the parents are moving in with their kids, or maybe the high schoolers are going on to college. So, their needs are different in their homes. So in one respect, some homeowners need to have a little larger living quarters because they have aging parents moving in with them, or the kids are moving out. So that will always be with us, that kind of dynamic. But the nice thing is, if you call us, we can kind of help you through those steps and tell you what's available. The other thing that we do free of advice, and I think sometimes people forget, to get your house market ready, we have found that buyers now, they don't want to do anything. They want to just move right into the house. So they're not looking for a project.
And I don't blame them. You're tired. You're weary.
And you can't find contractors.
You're going to move to a new house for you. You want it to feel as new as possible. So you want it to feel new when you move in. Whatever that definition of new to you is. Right. Yeah.
And, it used to be, a decade ago or so, people would say, well, I can change the
I'll do it myself.
I can
do that.
And now with supply issues and, many times people move into our area, they just don't have the contacts. They don't know who to call to get those projects done. So if there's, one piece of information that's nice to give those sellers who haven't sold in a while is get that house market ready and updated.
Yeah.
It really makes a huge difference. Bathrooms, kitchens, big. People spend a lot of time in those areas.
Freshening the exterior, there's nothing. That's one thing that hasn't changed. Curb appeal never changes. That first impression's everything. It's amazing how if you have a good first impression, people can work through things. But if the first impression it doesn't go well, you can have the best home and it sometimes can't sell. So it's
That's right. And it's gone from just not even just the inside and like you say first impressions, but again going back to COVID, people are outside. So now you see fabulous decks, you see fire pits, you see this is very desirable to buyers. This is what they're looking for.
Of course, it's ironic. We live in Michigan, and what is it? 4 or 5 months a year we get to use these great outside places, but I guess you want the best outside place you can if you're only going to be out there 4 or 5 months.
That's
but,
right.
Yeah,
and if you're all in the house, you can't wait to get out.
Don't we wish we had year-round like that? Yeah. I having had a pool for most of my life, I sit there, look at the cover on it going, I wish that was open, but that's not how it works.
Right, and that was another big demand the last 2 years is pools. Well, people want pools because they're spending more time at home, and they're spending more time with family and friends in the neighborhood and so forth. So those are just some of the subtle changes that have changed in our marketplace. But here again, we've got a pretty good pulse on what people are looking for, and we're happy if somebody wants to just call us and say, hey, what do I need to do to get my house market ready either for tomorrow or for next year?
So what we have is information.
We follow those trends.
We problem solve and supply the information, right?
Yeah, it's that creative side of real estate.
That's
right.
Really great. And it's never really changed. Our father, who was in real estate, talks about in his early days and going out to people's homes and having the same conversations. Our grandfather talked about when they finally brought inside plumbing into farmhouses and so forth. So I mean, it's
that was living.
Yeah, hey, hit the big time. So, but it's fascinating how the things are changing at the same time. That's, as a real estate professional, that's what we seem to know is kind of what the pulse is. So hopefully we can supply that.
Yes.
So, Carol, thanks. I think we've had another opportunity to talk, and we look forward to working with anybody who's interested in trying to help them get ready for the spring selling season. So.
Absolutely. You can find us on griffithrealty.com or just give us a call. We're located right here on Grand River in Brighton. Just give us a call. We're happy to help.
So thanks for joining us on Land and Legacy, and we look forward to talking to you again.